are.
As soon as
This.
we got to go ahead. Everybody ready to start? Or you want to finish?
What's your?
You want to finish or ready to start?
No, go ahead.
Ready to start? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to open the Monday, August 20, 2018 Leavenworth Board of Zoning Appeals. Looks like everyone is present. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes. If everyone has had a chance to look at them, are there any changes, additions, corrections, or a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and
I
second.
did have one correction, or is it necessary to mention that? Yes, I had one correction on the enumeration. On enumeration of the vote, it's just that we had voted affirmatively throughout, and it was 4-0, 4-0, 4-0, 4-0. And then we again voted affirmatively, and it was 0-4, 0-4. And I recommend that we change that, or request to change to 4-0, 4-0, just for standardization and to remove any misunderstanding. Is that a problem?
Nope, it's good.
Agree.
They just got flipped.
Okay,
Other than that, sir, I have nothing.
okay. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Minutes approved with the one correction. No old business, new business, 2018-13 BZA, 2534 Second Avenue. Hold a public hearing wherein the applicant, Pastor Ron Suttles, is requesting a variance from the development regulations to allow for a reduction in required rear yard setback, an increase in the allowed impervious area, and a reduction in the required drive separation for proposed church to be located at 2534 Second Avenue. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is a request for a new facility for the Body of Christ Outreach Ministries at 2534 Second Avenue. Just to sort of orient everybody, I'll zoom out here just a little bit. Bit down. So if I'll catch up. So this is down here is the Westar facility, and so we're looking just north of that, just before Second Avenue hits Lemma Street. So we're just right up here on this vacant lot. So the applicant is requesting 3 separate variances. So I'll just go over each of those individually briefly here. The first one is for a reduction in the rear yard setback. Property is zoned R16, and so it does require a 25-foot rear yard setback. So they're requesting a variance in that setback on the west from 25 feet to 6 feet. The second variance is to allow an increase in the allowed amount of impervious surface from 50% to 61% of the total lot area. That includes any paved surface, so parking, walkways, anything like that, in addition to the actual building footprint. And then the third variance request is for a reduction in the distance between the proposed southern access drive and the existing driveway and the adjacent property to the south. There is a required separation of 50 feet, and they are requesting a reduction to 15 feet. I'll just bring this up, and that would be, this right here is the existing driveway to the south for that existing house down there. So again, these are 3 separate variance requests. As you go through, once you get to voting on these, I would suggest going through their criteria separately for each variance request. So run through the criteria once for the first one, another time for the second, and so on. This project did go to the Development Review Committee last month, and barring the need for these variance requests, the project is feasible with just some minor stormwater type issues. So if you have any questions, I can answer those for you, and the applicant and his engineer are here as well.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
What's the required parking ratio?
The required parking ratio. For church, it's 1 per 4 seats or 1 per 30 square feet if there is no fixed seating.
So the design as shown meets that requirement?
Yes.
Does it have more parking than required?
No, they need 19 spaces and they've got 19 shown.
Spaces, okay.
What is the requirement for the 2 driveway entrances? For 19 spaces, I don't believe it requires 2.
No, there's no specific need for that. The engineer could probably elaborate on why they chose that design layout.
So as far as the city is concerned, there's no requirement for 2.
Correct.
Second question, the rear yard setback, is that from any structure or?
It's from the property line.
Right, but for a building or could a parking lot?
Pavement
be
is
constructed.
only 2 feet. Pavement has to be 2 feet from any property line, but the 25-foot setback is just for
For the
the
structure.
principal structure, correct?
So for anything vertical,
Did you receive any comments or letters or phone
We did
calls?
not.
were there any other proposals submitted for the layout?
This is the only one that we have seen.
Because based on those 2 things, if they flip-flopped the parking lot and the building and eliminated that southern driveway, they wouldn't have to be here, except for the 50% requirement for drainage or permeability, correct?
Well, there is a 25-foot front yard setback for the zoning district, and so I don't believe they would be able to meet that if they flipped it. They've shown the 25-foot building line there, you can see, and so I don't believe the the building would be able to be inside of that.
Well, maybe not the size of the building as laid out there, but were any other orientations submitted that would meet the requirement?
Not that we saw, no.
So this was the only one you were submitting?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions of staff?
Are there any safety issues with regard to the building and the proximity to the rear boundary or the west boundary?
I don't believe there are any safety issues. The setback is really established to provide sort of a uniformity and provide yard area, but I don't believe that's a requirement in regards to safety issues.
Okay, thank you.
There's no fire protection requirement to be able to allow firemen so many feet on their own
Nope,
property?
not on a lot like this, of this size.
Could we see the aerial again, please?
So this is the lot we're looking at. And this lot, behind it is landlocked and it is owned by this property owner up here to the north. And it's our understanding that the church had approached that property owner to purchase that lot. And the property owner had considered that and then ended up backing out of that, that arrangement.
Is there anyone that would like to ask any questions of the developer or the representatives?
You'd have to close the, you'd have to open the public hearing.
Right. But if we're done with the staff, then I can do that. If there are no other questions from the staff,
No, sir.
okay, then I would like to open the public hearing, and anyone who wants to speak either in favor of or against, please go up to the podium, state your name, and whatever it is you'd like to say.
Brett Napier, Napier Engineering, 207 South Fifth Street. Couple items that I heard. The 2 entrances, basically that's for emergency vehicles and for flow. You'd have stacked up vehicles if you had one entrance, so it's more of a functionality thing for the church and for emergency vehicles to get in and out. Secondly, the property to the west, that's an undevelopable lot. That will remain that way just because it's landlocked. So that's kind of our thinking on that, that you're really not encroaching on anyone. That's all I've got right now.
I couldn't set that better myself. I just wanted to support what Brett was saying.
Okay. I have one question, and that's, did you develop any scheme that would meet all the requirements of the city? And if you did, then what were the concerns you had for making changes for the one that you submitted? Either the size of the building, the number of driveways, the size of the parking lot, in any of those. Did you at any time make an attempt to fit in within the city's regulations? And what negative impact would that have on your project?
I think what happened is we had a building laid out. It was a metal building, correct? And we're kind of going off of that because they can get a pretty good deal on it right now. So that's the parameters I've held to as far as the layout goes for the lot. So that's kind of what the best case scenario for that building on that lot. And then also, if they purchase, the reason why it's snugged up on the west side, if they do purchase the ground to the west, then that would allow them to expand further to the east. So that 18 feet there between, on the east side of the building, that's for future expansion if they were to purchase the ground to the west.
Yeah, we really can't take that into consideration.
Right, but that's kind of why we put the building the way it is. The orientation. And there's an existing retaining wall along the street, along Second Avenue, that will come down. So that'll be removed.
So could you not move it forward and then expand to the west, should you ever purchase that land?
We're still going to need a variance.
A foot as opposed to however many.
Well, you still need a variance, so irregardless.
Well, it's one thing to have a lot that's not developable because of the contour, but if the neighbor to the west of that empty lot purchased it, they could utilize that as their back and do something with it, could they not?
Are you talking completely to the west?
Yes.
That's true.
So, I mean, by putting it 6 feet from the border, you've basically taken the owner of that lot and tied their hands. But
Not necessarily.
But if, as she suggested, you move the building forward the 18 feet, I understand you still need the variance, but that's a big difference, having 24 feet of setback as opposed to 6.
Just get away, just 1 foot, if that means getting it passed. If that were to mean to getting this passed, we could move that. To decrease the setback from, I think we had it listed at 5, so another 13, so yeah, we could reduce that.
I'm sorry you lost me. What
Well,
do you?
we
what are you
requested
talking
a
about?
5-foot setback, so if we move it.
You want to move it even closer? Is
Well,
that
that's
you're
what,
saying?
I think Julie said 6, but it's actually 5. I just put it a foot off gives you
Okay, yeah,
some
it's
wiggle
shown,
room.
it's shown as 6 on the drawing.
That's just the setback, but I had the proposed side yard setback there is 5.
Okay,
Probably small on your screen there, Julie. That's why.
oh, yeah. So you're saying if they moved the building from here, shifted it towards the parking lot, and so increased the setback there to the west?
Yeah,
It'd go from 5 feet to 23 feet.
would that be okay? I mean, if that's on the table, and if it means getting the rest of this passed, then I'm sure the pastor will agree with that.
I don't think we can guarantee that, but we could try and eliminate one of the 3 variances that you're seeking. Or is that not even enough? They need 20, did you say they need?
Well, I would also note that the regulations allow for staff to administratively approve a variance of up to 10% for things like setbacks. So for a 25-foot setback, we could
23.
administratively approve a reduction of 2.5 feet. So going from a 25-foot setback to a 23-foot setback, we could have administratively approved that instead of bringing that request to the board.
Is there a possibility that you could move those 6 spaces at the very front along Second Avenue over to the south side of your building? And then you could move the whole thing forward
I looked at that, it will not work.
because,
Because you have to turn in, and you also have to turn out, so you need 20 feet and another 24 feet.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it will not work.
Oh, what was the concern about the permeability? Is that the new regulations about taking care of stormwater
Yes.
on your own property? And so
Right.
what is the proposed solution to that if we consider that waiver? It seems to be an absolute, everybody else is being made to.
Right, that's the requirement, and so, should the variance be granted, to go from 50% to 61%, 61%, then it would be incumbent upon the, engineer and applicant to work with, our Public Works Department to come up with a suitable solution for handling stormwater runoff.
Well, I guess that was kind of part of my question is, I didn't think we had the authority to waive that, only the Public Works Director or the
No, you do.
floodplain manager to do that.
You do.
So even if we do, if he and the city engineer or
They
Public
still
Works
have
Director
to-
cannot come to an agreement, then it doesn't happen either.
Right. So the board, approving that request would basically just be, then giving the Public Works Director the ability to work with the applicant to, reduce that requirement.
Okay.
if you eliminated one of the driveways, that would take care of your permeability issue as well as your distance to the second driveway. Correct?
Yeah, they said to eliminate this. Well, you'd have more parking then, if you just had one.
But I think he said he needed that for proper ingress and egress.
It's not required
It's
by
not
the
a
city.
requirement.
It's not a requirement.
It's what
It's
It's,
not a
it's
requirement,
the
it's a
preferred,
desire.
their preferred.
It's
yeah.
desired for emergency vehicles and for flow of traffic in and out of the site.
Right.
I'm personally
I-
having a hard time because I feel like there's a few things that could happen
There
to
is-
make it certainly more in the spirit of the ordinance.
I guess there is one way of doing this, is to reduce the widths of our entrances.
Could you speak up just a little bit for me?
There is one way of changing the impervious areas, is have a one-way in, one-way out.
So how much would that reduce? You've got, what, 24 feet
Yeah.
for your entrance and egress? Because it's probably two-way.
Yes, it's for two-way
So
entry.
Would you cut that in half?
For one way, you can go down to 12 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking.
You could do that.
And that
That
would
would
buy
give-
another 24 feet.
With that, or you wouldn't know without doing the calculations probably, if that gets you within the 50%.
I believe that would get us under that 50%. Because right now, we're just 11% over. This would move 12, that moved 12.
Was there any concern from the city over two entrances coming out of a basically a public facility onto Second Avenue near the fire station?
No,
And that stoplight?
no.
Well, if you-
Even
if you had a-
Anthony School just up the.
If you
up the road
had,
doesn't have that many.
If you changed it to one way in and one way out, then you're only talking one exit.
True, but I was just looking at what you submitted.
Right.
From your personal perspective, would you prefer one way in, one way out, as opposed to one two-way out? In and out, I mean,
I thought we would be okay with one way in and one way out,
Okay.
but I was trying to meet what the requirements were, or what they could be, and we just wanted to be in compliance with whatever we needed to do.
if you made that one at the south, one way, whichever way, and you narrowed it to the other direction, 12 feet, is that still too close, Julie?
Yeah, they have to be 50 feet
50 feet?
separated, but so that, right now they're 15, and so you take that down to 20, 37.
So if they just eliminated one of them, moved.
I believe
either
we had
one
to
of them
have,
to the center of the lot, then the same result as one way in, one way out.
I believe when we were in the
Right.
DRC, it was more for emergency vehicles.
That circulation, yeah, it's not required, fire didn't require it, but it's always preferred, from the fire department to have sort of that circular, flow to a parking lot. But you could take both of those, drive entrances down to 12 feet and have it be one way in and then one way out.
So if they were amenable to do that, we could knock out two of these waivers, right? The distance from the driveway and the permeability, the 11% that they're in excess of.
It wouldn't knock out the distance from the driveway. The driveways
Well, they'd
are,
have to move it,
if they only had one driveway in
or
on the north
one
end.
way in, one way out, but move them such that they don't have to be in the same area.
They could, if the southern one was moved, then you're making circulation a little bit tough within the parking lot if you're moving that southern entrance too far north.
Yeah, but it can be done.
It could, but then without seeing the calculations, without Brett being able to run the calculations on that impervious surface area, I'm guessing it would probably knock out that need for a variance, but Brett would need to run those numbers.
Right.
Didn't we give a variance to another church for that very issue 3 or 4 months ago? On the permeability there on 10th Street? And given all the free
It was a little
space in the
bit
back,
different. It was in a low area, this is on high ground. But yes, we did. I'm just trying to minimize the variances. If we can come to an agreement on compliance with what the rules say, we're better off.
Yeah, so it sounds like, we could eliminate the need for the setback variance if they were to shift the building
Just the
basically
green
as far
space, yeah,
as.
the building to the green space.
Yeah,
and
sort of
give
flip
you the
that building to
10%.
green space, we could eliminate the need for that variance.
Actually, that would be all three then.
And then, depending on what the board wanted to require for the drive entrances and what the applicant was amenable to, again, moving the south entrance too far north is sort of affecting that internal circulation. So that would be something that the applicant would need to be amenable to, or you could reduce the degree of that variance being requested by just basically cutting that entrance width in half.
So basically, if he agreed to withdraw, redraw, with all of those changes we just said, he could be good to go tomorrow
Technically,
without having to work with the Public Works Director and everything else. All three of those seem to have solutions that would not require a variance.
and again, assuming that the reduction in those drive widths would be sufficient to meet that,
50%.
meet the 50%. So, and again, without Brett having the chance to run those numbers, we couldn't say for sure.
I'd say just to be safe, if we could have the variance on the impervious area, we could deal with the other two.
What was that? I didn't hear you.
Just to be safe, without running this through CAD, is to go ahead and ask for the variance on the impervious area. And we could eliminate the other two.
Well,
Do you think you could modify the driveways enough to eliminate that variance?
Because you're talking about,
It'll be close, but I
it
can't
would
tell you right
need to
offhand.
be up at about this level, would be about looks like about 50 feet. So if this is 24, so 15, 24, you're at 39, and then another,
You might be
10.
able to move the one to the north, a little bit further north, potentially. And to give you a little more circulation room. Maybe? Would this cause them to have to go back to development review, though?
We have to have 50 feet from
no.
right here.
do you,
To
you
here.
said that you had, staff had the authority to reduce or to change some of the setbacks by 10%.
Yeah,
Do
the,
you also have the authority at that 10% level to reduce the permeability space?
I believe that we can.
You can. So,
Sounds like
sounds
that if
like,
he's willing to modify the submission, that we could either table it and give him time to come back, or if we table it and he comes up with a solution, then it's just taken care of and they can proceed as early as tomorrow.
Does that also apply to driveway distance? 10%?
The 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I think it's going to be really close, but
Yeah.
if we have a little wiggle room,
Yeah.
maybe we can get it.
get there.
It seems to me
Yeah.
that if we approve on of the variance on the
Permeability?
permeability, since the city has to approve it through their other department. Permitting, that there wouldn't be any harm in us going ahead and voting on that variance today and giving it to them in case when they run all their numbers, they're at 51% and they've got to come back, or I guess that'd be within the 10%, but I don't see the harm since it has to be approved at that next level for us to go ahead with the variance request on that issue.
So if we give a variance for, say, 55%, which would be 5% over the allowed amount, Julie, would you then be able to allow another?
Well, and I'm thinking, I'm trying to find it here, but I believe the regulations only allow staff to actually give one administrative variance per project. So. If they could get, so I believe that they would need to still get two variances and staff could only do one administrative variance for that within the 10%.
This way another.
But by moving the building, that'll leave the, well, that's
That's the
It's
one.
close.
that's
the one.
That's one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not quite there.
Parking and basically
But then
Move this 2 feet.
we
this
would
way,
just
and
have to
eliminate
consider
that
the
setback.
variance on the impervious percentage of the,
We could do that, and then we could also approve the variance
Driveway.
on the moving of the, contingent upon them moving the building.
Yes.
And that way, we're not
Yes.
using their 10% on that one.
Yes, and you could approve a variance contingent upon an agreed upon modification to the site plan.
yeah.
Which is exactly what we would have to do with the impervious. because-
Right, with any of them.
Because it's just, that's just a recommendation that the Public Works can come up with an equitable solution to the ultimate problem. And if not, it doesn't matter if we give them a variance or not.
So if we did a variance approving with the conditions of moving the building forward, whatever that distance is would be, I'm guessing, how would it be then?
23 instead of 25, is
Yeah, so
that what I
a
heard?
2-foot variance. And then if we did impervious surface at, say, 55%, which is 10% above the, and then that would leave Julie the ability to do the variance for the distance of the driveway. if
For
she
that,
wanted
for that setback
Yeah.
to. That
separation.
setback.
Can we modify any of these? I didn't think we could. You're requesting a 50 to 61%. If we choose a different number, is that not meeting?
You
the
can, if
intent of
it's
the-
agreed upon with the applicant, that the board would be voting on making a recommendation based on, again,
So the
an
applicant
agreed
would have to
upon.
request a change in that so that we could then
Yeah,
vote on it.
We just
Okay.
can't request, we can't give them more, give them less.
yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
This is on the impervious area.
Well, that and moving the building forward.
So we reduced it to 23 feet on the setback, and the impervious areas would be,
55, which is 10% more than,
I think we can work with that.
and then she could work with you on the driveway.
Right.
I think that gets real close to the spirit of the ordinance. I don't know what anybody else feels like.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think it does.
Agree with.
Okay, so if I, just make sure I understand, then you'd be voting on two variances. So a reduction in the required 25-foot setback to the west to 23 feet, and an increase in the allowed amount of impervious surface from 50% to 55%.
From 61 down to 55%. Can we handle it as one
This will make this
package?
basically.
She said we had to vote all three separately.
Yeah, so each variance request,
All right.
you'd need to go through separately.
Okay. I thought the first one, the setback from 25 to 23 was the one you wanted to do internally.
6 foot instead of
And the driveway one was the one you wanted.
It doesn't
us to vote
matter too much to us anyway.
on. I'd prefer the rear setback one. It's cleaner for us to vote on, and then let staff worry about the other one. If that-
Whatever.
If there's no objection.
Yes, agree.
No objection.
Okay.
So you're gonna vote on the rear setback and the impervious surface.
Number one and number two?
Yep,
And,
yep.
and you will,
And we'll work on the
address-
driveway separation.
number three.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions of the developer or engineer? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other discussion amongst the board before we go to a vote?
No?
Okay. A request for a variance may be granted upon the finding of the board that all of the following conditions have been met. The board shall make a determination on each condition, and the finding shall be entered into the record. And we will We will address item number 1, the rear yard building setback first. That the variance requests arise from such condition which is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the same zone or district and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant. Who would like to go first?
I agree.
I agree.
Agree.
Agree?
Actually, I disagree. Because I think it was caused by him. Anyway, number 2, that the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
Agree?
Agree.
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 That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
Agree.
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 Agree?
That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
Agree?
Agree.
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 And that the granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
Agree.
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 Agree?
Okay, that one passes. We will address the second issue, and that's the increase in the allowed amount of impervious surface from 50 to 55%. That the variance request arises from such condition which is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the same zone or district and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant.
Agree.
Agree.
I disagree again.
Agree.
I agree, because, I mean, they need 19 spaces, and to get 19 spaces, I think they're gonna have slightly more than 50%.
That the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
Agree?
Agree.
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 That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
Agree.
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 Agree?
That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
Agree?
Agree.
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 And lastly, that granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
I agree.
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 Agree?
Second item passes as well. In granting a variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, and restrictions upon the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effects of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these development regulations. Is this where we add that these are based on moving the building?
Yes, yep,
So not in accordance with the plan submitted, but in the review and agreement on the
yes,
movement of the placing of the building.
correct.
If I could just add a comment, is that appropriate? I would like to encourage the developer to try to get as close to that 50% as possible. Even though we granted the variance, we'd love for you to be in compliance.
Well, it's still Mr. McDonald's game. So, good luck working with Public Works, but we have given you an opportunity. Okay. Do you need a motion that we now both approve of those, or
Yes.
what our vote? Okay.
Yep.
Separately or together?
You can do it together and then subject to moving the building and reducing the widths of the drive entrances.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second.
And you have the magic words.
I'm almost tempted to say, in accordance with the agreements we made in the discussions on moving the building.
Yes, and reducing the
and re-
drive widths.
And reducing the driveways.
Yes.
Okay. Now, all in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0.
Okay.
So we don't need to make a motion or address the third item?
No, that'll be reflected in the minutes that
Okay.
That
is going to be.
staff will
Yes, yeah, handled separately.
handle separately. Okay. Second item, 2018-14 BZA West Glen, first plat. Hold a public hearing for case number 2018-14 BZA, wherein the applicant, Mike Riley, is requesting a variance from the development regulations to allow reduced front setbacks and side yard setbacks for specific lots in the West Glen subdivision. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is a request for reduced front and side yard setbacks on specific lots in the West Glen First Plat subdivision. This property is zoned R16, high-density, single-family residential. It was rezoned from R125, low-density, single-family residential in 2017, and the plat was approved at that time. So just to give a little bit of context, let me show the preliminary plat. This is the preliminary plat of the entire West Glen subdivision. 20th Street is over here along the left side. New Lawrence Road is coming up. So that's the preliminary plat of the entire subdivision. The first plat is the first phase of the subdivision that has been approved and recorded, which is the northernmost section and southwesternmost section of the subdivision. And so then more specifically, what we're talking about tonight is just this very southwest portion of that first plat. And so I'll just run through specifically the variances that they're requesting. This part of the subdivision is going to be developed with maintenance provided single-family homes. So a little bit smaller homes, more villa style, with the full maintenance provided. So they're requesting a variance in the allowed front and side yard setbacks just to allow some more visual interest and a better aesthetic to that subdivision instead of having them all lined up in a row at those setbacks. So for lots 27 through 30, these are the northernmost 4 lots. They're requesting a reduction from the required front yard setback of 25 feet down to 20 feet. You can see that red line there where the reduction is requested. Lots 31 to 34 on the other side of the street there. They're requesting a reduction in the front yard setback from 25 feet to 18 feet. Lot 35 is down this cul-de-sac. On the other side of this tract is being maintained as an open space. There's a high-pressure gas line in there, so it can never be developed with any lots or any structures. They're requesting a reduction in the front yard setback from 25 feet down to 15 feet, and a reduction in the north side setback from 6 feet to 0 feet. And again, this lot does abut that tract, which is unable to be developed due to the high-pressure gas line. Lot 40 and 41, down here at the end of the cul-de-sac, requesting a reduction in the front yard setback from 25 feet to 20 feet. You can see that red line there. And then back up the other side of the cul-de-sac, lot 47, a reduction in the front yard setback from 25 feet to 18 feet. And then again, a reduction in the north side yard setback from 6 feet to 0 feet. And again, that does abut that tract with the high-pressure gas line that cannot be developed. So if you have any questions, I can answer those for you, and the developer is here as well.
Would you repeat again why, or the reason reason for requesting all of these? I can see on the odd lots and the pie-shaped lots, but the straight lots to add visual,
Yep, so they have that ability to kind of stagger the homes a little bit, and not have just that straight 25 feet setback for all of them. Just give a little bit more interest and variation to how the homes are arranged in this part of the subdivision.
have you ever done this for any other subdivision before?
This is the first subdivision that we've had in probably 10+ years, and I'm not aware of any that have been approved, any variances that have been approved for this.
Yeah, me either.
I'm sorry.
And I would assume that along with changing those or reducing those, that would allow the house, the structure to move forward, which then would reduce the size of the driveway, which if you have sidewalks in there, the cars may be having the tail ends of the cars extend over the sidewalks.
And that could be a concern.
A few months ago, when we were looking at the variance request for that lot near 20th and Spruce, actually it was a little bit south of there. You know which one I'm talking about? Wiley, Mr.
Yes.
Wiley's.
Oh,
In that subdivision in there, they've got some of those houses are just right up to the street. I mean, very little, especially in those little knockouts. Would that have been through a variance, or would that have been? Or maybe I'm misremembering the layout of that, but it seemed like a lot of those houses were really close to the front street.
And that may be under a different zoning. I'm trying to, yeah, here we go. And that should be the same. Yeah, so those would be the same setback requirements.
mostly that one was a driveway width issue.
Right, but I was
Yeah.
remembered that little knockout right there,
Right.
where the house is just right there on it. I don't know if they count that.
My concern is if you wanted to vary the front, you have plenty of room back behind it to move it closer and move it farther away, rather than move everyone closer to the street. I don't see the advantage.
Yeah, so the developer could probably address his reasoning for requesting this.
Do all
You'd like to
other,
hear from
are
him?
all other conditions met by the size of the lots or the square
Yes.
footage? And so it's just a matter of the setback and well, when they're all together, I can appreciate that you would have some kind of visual effect, but on the south side, one lot, two lots together, it doesn't have the same argument. Anyone else have any other questions of staff?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing, and if anyone wants to speak either for or against, please come up to the podium, state your name, and anything you'd like to say.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thanks. Mike Riley with JMK Partners, the developer for West Glen. Admittedly, this is a unique situation. The plat was just approved, as Julie said, a few months ago. Currently, what you see here has been approved and has been developed horizontally, but nothing vertical has taken place on any of these lots. There are no neighbors. There's nothing going on at the present time. We have filed for our current first 10 building permits, but again, nothing's going vertical yet. So what we see here is kind of a blank slate still. So the plat was filed, to kind of take you back, the plat was filed, and then about 2 months later after the plat was filed, I attended a summit with the Kansas City Home Builders Association on density and mixed-use developments and maintenance-provided communities. And one of the themes at that summit was setbacks and movement that has been created, the trend in density and mixed use and maintenance provided communities to mix those setbacks to create movement, if you will, from an eye perspective. So I looked at internally 2 communities that we have locally. One, they were both maintenance provided. One, Kensington off of 20th and Limit, and the other, or 20th and Violet Limit, sorry, get those confused. And the other one, Edgewood, at the same location. Kensington has a unique situation that every home is about 20 to 21 foot setback from the curb. It's very, very tight. And every house and every single garage is just lined up. And I think the trend that they were discussing at this summit was trying to get away from that visual, right? It's just garage, garage, garage. And again, you're talking 5, 7, 10 feet. But that can make a big difference when you're looking at 30 homes in a row to create that visual movement. And so we came back and looked at the plat and said, is there a way, working with staff, that we could accomplish this? Well, not without coming to the BZA from a time perspective. Obviously, we could go back and refile a plat, but from a timing perspective, that simply wasn't going to be possible for us to get through that and still be able to put foundations in this fall. We would miss the market and miss the winter. So the BZA was the right fit. So again, a little unique in the sense that we just came back from this summit and looked at our plat and said, we thought the movement idea and creating that differential of 5, 7, 10 feet of that front garage would make a lot of sense instead of just having every single garage lined up at the 35 foot or 40 foot line. And again, trying to do what we're doing with our maintenance provided communities in the sense that we're not, again, we're trying to adapt how we develop. We're no longer looking at individual lots when we develop our new housing maintenance provided communities. We're trying to look at them from a whole development from a landscaping perspective. So no longer are we just looking at lot 31 and landscaping lot 31 as a single family house. Because it's maintenance provided, you're going to find that landscaping, those berms and that landscaping plan being much more global and transitioning over lot lines, because quite honestly, it's not going to matter because everything's maintenance provided. So we thought, again, from the front yard setbacks, we thought obviously where we've outlined those opportunities would help us create the movement. This is the first phase, but as Julie showed, the second phase, that street continues to the east, and so there's a long line of single-family homes that will be coming. This was just phase 1 right here. So this straight street will have, houses all lined up effectively, with the garages all at the same setback currently. As we transition to the cul-de-sac, we picked a handful of lots that we thought made sense. We do need a couple side yard setbacks close to that gas line to make some of our plans work. But again, Brett and I, working with staff and just looking at the plat, we picked a handful of lots that we thought just visually would help make some sense of shrinking it down, recognizing we didn't want to change every single lot. So that was the reason why we picked some of those lots and not others. So really, that's the reasoning behind the request. Again, it's a blank slate out there today. So from a, that's why obviously there's no neighbors here. So we were just trying to create some movement, trying to kind of be a fresh look at density and mixed use and maintenance provided communities, and to bring in what the development community is seeing regionally and nationally is going on. The movement within those setbacks, we thought was something that might make some sense for us.
Are the lots not long enough for you to keep the original setback and just move the houses back even further? 5 to
No,
10
so
feet?
the lots along, the lots that we've picked, and especially along that main street, we wouldn't be able to go the other direction. We wouldn't be able to move the house back. We'd have a rear setback problem then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about the concern of parking cars in the driveway? If you moved it all the way up to the closest that you'd be allowed, would someone pulling into their driveway have to park on?
You're not gonna have
across
that
the
problem with
sidewalk?
one car. Obviously, if you have two cars backed up, that could be a concern, which you have in any subdivision today. If you pull two cars, or possibly more than that, behind each other, you're gonna have that in any subdivision. So you're not gonna have that with one car.
It's gonna be 1 or 2 car garages.
Oh, these are all minimum two, some two, some three, minimum two. Yeah.
Is this something that is potentially addressed in the long-range plan in terms of aesthetics? Is there a section in there on that talks about the desirability of the way the houses are sited?
Not in the comprehensive plan, but there are in the design guidelines section of the development regulations, and there is, that is addressed in that developers should try to stagger and vary the appearance and orientation of garages, as much as possible within a subdivision.
But does it address setbacks, changing the setbacks? Because if it doesn't do that, then it's exactly what we've been talking about. The developer alternates either the style of house that he puts on the lot, or pushes it back a little, or front a little.
Right, not specifically reduce setbacks.
Because all houses nowadays aren't the straight front.
Right.
You know, the entire front, it's just one big plane. So I could see, maybe a little rotation there, but they're not like that anymore. Most of them, the garages stick out 3 or 4 or 5, 6 feet in front of the front door. And therefore, that undulating effect is already created by the style of house that you plan on building on it.
Yeah, but it's really not when you think about it, because visually, if you're looking at the house straight on, you're correct. But as you're driving down that street, that's not the effect you have, because we'll always try to put our driveways or our garages on the high side of the lot. Well, that's gonna be on the same side of, in this particular case, all of these lots will have garage left houses, because that's just from a drainage perspective, it's much easier for us as a builder to get drainage away from us when we put the garage on the high side of the lot. So you're gonna have garage left, garage left, garage left, garage left, all the way down, and vice versa probably here. Well, you'll probably have it, garage right, all the way down. So
So are you only
as
using
you're
one
sitting there
style of
looking
house?
at that house, I would agree with you that garage and that front door plane are offset, but not as you're driving down that street. It's all garage right on line.
Yeah, well, we'll agree to disagree. Are you only having one style of house in this subdivision, or do you have a portfolio of different styles of homes?
Style-wise, these are all reverse story and a half ranches with basements, some walkout, some daylight basements. There will be no 2 stories in this particular section of the subdivision, no split entries. This is all ranch product because of the maintenance provided aspect. So style,
Like cookie cutter.
floor
are you
plan
gonna have-
wise, there'll be a mix of 5 to 7 to 8 different floor plans, 3 or 4 different elevations per floor plan. So a mix of what you're gonna see, but all still very similar. We're talking roughly 1,500 square feet per plan, whether that's Plan A or Plan D. So they're all gonna look very similar, with the exception of the interior floor plan being different. Exterior-wise, they're gonna be pretty similar.
So if I think I understand you're saying that the garages will be proud of the front door. They won't be lined up with the front door.
Most of the case, Mike is right in the sense that the garage and that front door plane is offset. It's not all one line. But in this particular case, again, all the garages are gonna be lined up, as in with most communities that you'll drive through within our community. The difference being, when you do a project like this, the density is much tighter. We're talking 50 to 52 foot lots as far as width goes. Typical subdivision, you know, you're at 60, 65, 70, 75 feet. This is 52. So the density in our maintenance provided communities is tight.
I guess that was a concern I had when you said that there would be some that had 3-car garages.
Yeah, some of the lots do fit 3-car garages. Some don't. All fit 2. Just a mix of, depending on the plan, the lot, all will fit 2, some will fit 3. So that was, you know, when we're looking at density on a 52-foot wide lot versus a 75-foot wide lot, you just have a lot more garages staring at you as you're driving down that road.
Why wouldn't you ask for a variance for all of the lots then, instead of just those?
Well, quite
Those are
honestly, we
that are
didn't think
highlighted.
that would pass. We just thought this was a better fit. After sitting with our engineer, we just kind of thought visually that main drag being important, and then we picked the handful of lots that we thought might make some sense coming down the cul-de-sac. There was, quite honestly, not a lot of engineering behind it. It was more what we thought visually would make some sense.
And I understand the concept because I'm a planner. And so, particularly when they're that tight together, you will see that line. It was more pronounced than if you had the wider lots like you were talking about. And it certainly makes sense, I think, in some situations where you have mixed use, where you have people walking about and around and about, if they're going down to the market or whatever. I'm not sure it fits real well here, unless you have some nice front porches that people are gonna be sitting on so they can walk by and see their neighbors. Yeah, I don't know.
And for the phase, this is phase 2?
This is phase 1.
Okay. For all of those other houses that extend for that street and on up and connect the other subdivision, is the intent to continue this, or is this like a prototype test case to see if it works, and if it doesn't, you're gonna drop it?
If you want to go back to the preliminary plat, Julie.
Is that,
Everything highlighted in yellow is maintenance provided villas.
okay, so that's your target, is the reduced setbacks for the low maintenance, no maintenance villas.
Correct.
But again, that runs into a phase that we're not looking at.
That's correct.
And we end up with like the
23.
Wiley property on 20th. So I hate to make a commitment for a multiple phase project when we're only looking at one and there's no guarantee that it'll ever be continued. And without it being continued, to me, it lacks the justification of doing this one.
The second plat is being filed. We'll be putting in the second phase starting next year. Sanitary sewer is already being designed by Mr. Napier. We go before the DRC this Thursday. Second plat will be installed. What you see there is going to happen. Now,
Well,
you know,
Mr.
I
Wiley
understand.
said the same thing.
Yeah, I understand.
And his
Our track record, I think, indicates that what we typically plan happens.
Is there another way that you could accomplish what you're trying to do, maybe with the architectural styles, as opposed to actually changing the setback? You know, changing the roof lines up maybe more, or?
Yeah, we certainly do that. We hip some roofs, we gable some roofs. You'll see a mix of product. But as it sits today, you will have garages at the minimum setback, all lined up.
See, I guess that's where I have an issue in that this is all basically experimental. And if we had some examples of what didn't work and then this is a solution to make it work, I would be more inclined to have an open mind, but in this one, I just don't see it.
Well, I've seen it in other parts of the United States, but it's usually in a walkable community, and those garages are flush with the front doors. You know, your garage is set back. It's not,
Yeah.
what do you call that? I forget, there's a word for it.
Snout type.
Snout,
Garage,
yes,
yeah.
thank you, same, I was just like, what is that word? It's not a snout garage. And so, you know, when you have a snout garage, I don't think this particular concept works nearly as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of, is it broken or is this gonna solve a problem? To me, is it gonna be visually more appealing? Again, I drive through Kensington today. Kensington worked, 28 homes within a 5-acre site. Every single garage is 20 foot off of the curb. 20 foot off the curb, not the right of way. 20 foot off the curb. Visually, it's great. It works fine. I don't think there's any problem with Kensington.
Yeah, and it was a unique, enclosed, self-contained subdivision. This is not. And that's where I have an issue with it.
And I think actually moving those snout garages closer to the street will make them more prominent and more in your face. I personally don't like snout garages, but that's me. You know, so I don't think that accomplishes necessarily what you're talking about, making it more appealing, because it's closer to the street, and so it's just gonna be right there.
The people who move into those homes, though, aren't they, tend to be a little bit older, looking for no maintenance?
Yeah, what I would share with you is the reason that our density is what it is because of just that. We're going to appeal to a segment of the marketplace that doesn't want big yard. They don't want maintenance. So, yeah, that's exactly what this particular type of project is going to appeal to. So we were just trying to make it more appealing, quite honestly. We can do what we're doing and just continue down the road. We just came back from the summit and said, you know, we think this kind of makes some sense. If you don't think it does, it doesn't. We'll just keep putting them right on the minimum setback and go.
I think and just from my personal perspective, it involves more than just moving it closer to the road. I think you have to look at a lot of other elements that go along with that. I think the ones that have the unique shapes, we certainly need to talk about those in terms of your setbacks, but the others along whatever the street that is, I have a problem with.
And I think that goes along with a planned community, where you have an
Right.
entire community that is, you're thinking about every single lot in that community and how to enhance it, and you control it, and right now you do. But if, this is just part of a larger subdivision, and when you do that, a lot of the things that make it work, like what she was saying, a walkable community, or not as many houses. Kensington doesn't have, you know, this concentration of houses. It has a better chance of succeeding. This, you will succeed in this demographic because there is a need and a requirement for it. And I don't think this, and I hate to call it a gimmick, but this new trend, I don't think is really going to matter to your target audience. And you would have more success with the style of the building, the house that you put on it, than whether or not it's set back forward or in reverse, or limited to one story instead of two, or, you know, that you would almost need to have it all laid out, and this house will go here and here and here and here, and I know you want to sell a lot, and then you pick the owner, and then the owner says, this is what I'd like to have, and you custom build, and which is what most people want. So
I look forward to you coming back with a plat somewhere, not necessarily here, for a planned community in Leavenworth. That would be awesome.
Sure.
any other questions, comments?
You're gonna strike down the front is there any way, the sides on track D and track C on those lot 47 and 35 to get those, since really doesn't impact anything?
Yes,
I'm
could you
not in
point
opposition
it,
to any
please?
of them, if we're putting our toes in the water, but.
Side yard setbacks here.
Oh, the zeros?
This will never be developed.
Right.
Doesn't make any difference to me.
Who maintains it?
It's owned by us. It'll be maintained by the homeowners association when the community's done.
Okay, all right.
Both track C and D?
So it's really just an easement
It's an
by the
easement.
utility company across there, and the homeowners association, which is you,
Correct.
will own it. Okay, that doesn't seem to me
I think
out of line.
Makes plenty of sense to do it the side setback. You've got unusual shaped lots there that butt up to an open space.
Okay, so which lots are those, please?
35 and 47.
35 and 47. If we get to approving all the setbacks that are requested in this application, are we setting a precedent for ourselves for continuing in the same
Yes,
method?
yes.
Well, in the last 10 years, there haven't been any developments like this. I mean,
There isn't any anywhere,
right.
except in large metropolitan areas.
So the precedent will be, if somebody else wants to develop an area with this many homes in a maintenance provided situation, then yeah, that would be, but not,
I'd say
just
only if we
across the
put
board.
that restriction on there, that it only be allowed because this is a, whatever you want to call it, I don't want to call it a high-density family residential district. But I would say unless we specifically say because this is,
what was the terminology you used, maintenance provided?
It's provided.
a maintenance, yeah, there it is, maintenance provided. Maintenance provided community,
Senior area.
then it could be expounded into just about anything. And I guess I would like to see it come, if it's brought up again, I'm not in favor of a blanket approval so that it sets a precedent.
That's why we vote.
That's why we vote, exactly.
So Julie, would it be acceptable for us to accept only 2 of the lots for variance?
So you would just be, so if a decision is made to not, vote on the other lots, you would just be voting on the side yard setback reduction for lots 35 and 47 and no other of the requests.
We wouldn't have to deny those others? Okay.
Could you ask that, because I was gonna ask that.
Oh,
If we
sorry.
had to go through that whole process, deny it, then we could go back and say, however, we do choose to,
Well, I think we should just,
Favorable.
As
We
you
should
go
just
through
vote on
each,
it.
as you go through each criteria, I would just sort of, you could make the note as you're reading the criteria that, we're just considering the
Well, it's-
side yard setbacks.
it's a little tough based on this layout rather than the 1, 2, 3 we just looked at.
it's
that-
helpful if you look, it might be helpful if you look at it that way. I mean, you can
Well,
tell it's just these 2.
I mean, if it's laid out this way, we have to consider each one of these.
Well, if you want to read through all 5 criteria 6 different times,
Not
then
really.
you can do that.
Is-
But
is there a
I'm
way?
trying to
I
make it a
think,
little
can we
easier
do
for you.
it twice? Once for the side, that abut the tracks D and C, and then vote for whether we allow the front setback?
Well, I think this would really be similar to what we did on the last, application, that you decided before you went through the voting that you were not going to consider the driveway separation. So in your discussion now, you've decided that you're not going to consider the front yard setbacks, that you're just gonna consider the side yard setback request, and so that's what you would be considering in your votes. So the same, basically the same as we did the last time.
I like your proposal better.
I can't
We
remember what it was.
We addressed them all. If we addressed them all as presented and voted on it, whatever comes out, comes out. Then if that issue still, say it's not approved, then can we come back and ourselves introduce that we do want to favorably look at the side yard setbacks for 35 and 47?
After you've denied everything?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
No.
I think, what I would
because
think,
basically what we're picking and choosing what we want to vote on, and I'm trying to figure out a good way for us to be able to do that.
Couldn't we
Well,
put-
like I said, it'd be the same way that you did with the last application. So in your discussion, you've already eliminated items that,
But the-
and come
but-
to,
But the developer and the owner agreed to some things, and so we based our voting on them agreeing to certain conditions.
could our motion not be to deny all front yard setbacks and approve the two side setbacks? Can we do that in the same motion?
It'd be faster if we just vote. Let's do the side setbacks and then
yeah.
vote on, or
I thought that's
go
what
through the
she said.
criteria. Well,
Yeah, isn't it?
no, because she was talking about denying and affirming all in one vote.
that as
Denying
one
with the
group,
exception of the two side
and then
setbacks.
35 and 47. Because basically, we have 27 to 34
Yeah, I know, that's
are
why.
are front back setbacks, as well as 40 to 41 are front setbacks only. That would be one grouping.
Can we do that? That sounds
What was the
reasonable.
proposal?
Would be to consider 27 to 30, 31 to 34, and 40 to 41, which are requests for variance of the setbacks.
Front setback.
The
Front
front
setbacks.
setbacks.
Take that as a group. And then consider 35 and 47 separate.
Sure.
Oh,
Every-
wait a second. 47's got a setback.
Front.
They all have a
Front and
front
They all have a
setback,
front
yes.
setback. So if we took front setbacks.
For
and-
all.
For all, and took them as one package.
Right. That's what I suggested, voting on the front setbacks and then voting on the
Come
side
back.
setbacks separately.
Okay, everybody in agreement on that?
Sure.
Okay, sir, Roger.
Okay. Okay, close the public hearing. Any further discussion amongst staff? Which I think we already did, but I'll ask again. And if not, we'll go through the process. Okay, we are addressing the front yard setbacks for all lots only. A request for variance may be granted upon a finding of the board that all of the following conditions have been met. The board shall make a determination on each condition, and the finding shall be entered in the record. The first one, that the variance requested arises from such condition which is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the same district or zone and is not created by an action or actions of the property owners of the applicant.
I disagree.
I agree.
Disagree.
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 Second one, that the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
Disagree.
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 I agree.
I agree.
That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
I disagree.
I agree.
Disagree.
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 That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
Disagree.
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 I agree.
I agree.
And lastly, that the granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
I disagree.
I agree.
Disagree.
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 Based on that, the motion does not carry. All right, now we can take the second vote. And this is on the side yard setbacks, which only applies to lots 35 and 47. That the variance requested arises from such condition which is unique in the property in question and not ordinarily found in the same zone or district and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant.
Agree.
Disagree.
Agree.
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 That the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
I agree.
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 That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
Agree.
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 That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
Agree.
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 And lastly, that the granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
Agree.
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 That motion carries. In granting a variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, and restrictions upon the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effects of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these development regulations. Are there any conditions or any other restrictions desired by any of the board members, or can we recommend approval of the side yard setbacks for the two lots as voted on? Any comments?
Recommend approval, sir.
Have a motion and second?
Oh, pardon me.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, raise your right hand. Carries. Okay, any other business?
No other business. I would just know at the last meeting, we just discussed briefly, changing the meeting time to 6 o'clock. The two other, boards, Planning Commission and, Historic Preservation Commission changed their meeting times, from 7 o'clock and 5 o'clock respectively to 6 o'clock. So we just wanted to present that as an option to this board, if you'd so choose.
Is this like for winter or for permanent?
Just permanent.
Any
I'm
discussion?
fine with it.
I'd prefer 6 o'clock,
6 o'clock.
just to get it done.
I don't care.
That's it.
Oh, well, I phrased that incorrectly. I could work with either one of them.
I may have some conflicts, but I will work with them.
So are you proposing effective the next meeting, whenever it
That'd
might
be
be?
at the next meeting, and so we would just, make that change in the bylaws and, yeah, have it take effect going forward.
Is
You
there
might wanna
is there a
remind us
real
a time or
reason?
two.
And we've been reminding our other boards.
Is there
7
a,
o'clock has been institutionalized in my brain.
is there a reason for the change?
I think the thinking for the other boards was just so there wasn't a gap between, the end of the 5 o'clock workday for most people and then 7 o'clock. So just kind of for the board members to come straight from work to the meeting.
No, because most of them, at least in the past, was time to go home and eat
Yeah.
and then come back to the meeting.
Yeah, no one does that.
I guess not anymore.
Not anymore.
Why not?
All right.
What is, you have something against eating?
No,
Oh, okay,
I'm just
just preparing.
pulling you right.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? I'll second it. Can I second it?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.